All right, let's talk about one of the most incredible figures in all of history, Alexander the Great. I mean, his name is so famous, it's basically a synonym for conqueror. But the real story here isn't just about winning. It's about how he did it and how he completely reshaped the world in just a little over a decade. The big question that's kept historians busy for centuries is pretty simple. How on earth did one guy, leading a pretty small army from this little kingdom in northern Greece, manage to bring down the largest, most powerful empire the world had ever seen? And here's the part that sounds like it's straight out of a movie. He did all of that without ever losing a single battle. Not one. It sounds like pure fiction, right? But it's a fact. So to really get our heads around this almost unbelievable achievement, we've got to go all the way back to the beginning. Because, you see, before Alexander was this unstoppable conqueror, he was a prodigy. Seriously, his entire childhood seems like it was perfectly engineered to create this leader of unbelievable skill and, well, ambition. Okay, so check this out. He's born into royalty, right? Some people even whispered he was the son of the god Zeus. Then, at just 10 years old, he tames this wild horse that no one else could even get near, showing this incredible insight. And who becomes his personal tutor? Oh, just the greatest philosopher of the time, Aristotle. So by the time he's 18, he's not just some kid in the army, he's commanding a whole wing in a major battle. Every single step of his early life was like a trailer for the main event. And this is so crucial. His time with Aristotle wasn't just about philosophy and science. No, this was a masterclass in leadership. Aristotle taught him that real, lasting power wasn't just about having the bigger army. It came from understanding people, from brilliant strategy, and from diplomacy. And that lesson, that would become his ultimate secret weapon. So, with his father's mission to get revenge on the massive Persian Empire as his driving cause, Alexander sets out to do what everyone thought was impossible. And the whole thing really came to a head at one of the most famous battles in history. Just look at these numbers for a second. At the Battle of Gaugamela, Alexander was outnumbered by more than 2-1. The Persian king, Darius III, had brought the entire might of his empire to finally crush this young upstart. I mean, on paper, this should have been an absolute slaughter for Alexander's army. But see, Alexander never fought the battle you expected him to fight. He used his mind. He pretended to retreat, luring the huge Persian army forward. As they charged ahead, thinking victory was theirs, they accidentally created a gap, a weak spot in their own line. And that was the moment. Alexander personally wheeled his best cavalry around and charged like a thunderbolt right through that gap, smashing the Persian army from behind. The shock was absolute. The Persian king literally fled for his life. His army completely fell apart, and he was later killed by his own men. With that one brilliant, audacious move, the most powerful empire on earth was finished. And at just 25 years old, Alexander was the undisputed master of Asia. But hey, conquering land is one thing. Actually, ruling it is something else entirely. This is where most conquerors trip up. But this is also where Alexander's true genius, that part Aristotle had taught him, really came into play. He knew empires weren't held together by swords alone. Instead of just crushing the people he conquered, he brought them into his world. He let local leaders keep their jobs. He went to their temples and honored their gods. He even married the daughter of the king he had just beaten. Then he took all the Persian gold he'd captured and pumped it back into the local economies to get trade booming. He wasn't trying to replace their culture. He was fusing with it. He was basically putting Aristotle's lessons into practice on a global scale. He got it. You can force people to obey you for a little while, but if you want real, lasting loyalty, you have to earn it. And by showing them respect, he won over the very people he had just defeated in battle. So after Persia, Alexander just kept going, pushing east all the way to the edges of the known world, to India. And it was there that he faced, maybe not his biggest army, but for sure his most formidable opponent. There was this Indian king, Porus, who simply refused to back down. The battle that followed was one of the toughest, bloodiest fights of Alexander's entire life. Porus and his men, fighting with these terrifying war elephants, pushed the Macedonian army to its absolute breaking point. Now, Alexander did eventually win, but he was just blown away by the king's courage. So he went up to him and asked Porus, his prisoner, how he wanted to be treated. And Porus, totally unbowed, just looked him in the eye and said, like a king. Alexander respected that so much that he didn't just give Porus his kingdom back, he gave him even more land. It's one of those moments that tells you everything you need to know about his character. So, he'd done it. He'd conquered the world. He had beaten every army, outthought every general, and even earned the respect of his enemies. He had achieved more than pretty much anyone in history. And then, at just 32 years old, his story comes to this sudden and really, really strange end. He gets a fever in Babylon and is declared dead. But get this, for 6 days, in the blistering Mesopotamian heat, his body didn't show any signs of decay. For centuries, people said this was proof he was a god. But modern science has a much more chilling idea. What if Alexander wasn't actually dead? He may have had a rare kind of paralytic stroke that slowed his breathing so much that it was impossible to detect. He may have been pronounced dead while he was still alive. So even though his life was cut shockingly short, the world he left behind was completely transformed. His legacy wasn't just about the maps he redrew, it was about the new world he created. He kicked off what we call the Hellenistic Age, spreading Greek art, language, and ideas from Egypt all the way to India. He founded more than 20 cities, a lot of them named after himself, like the great city of Alexandria in Egypt. His battlefield tactics, they're still required reading at military academies like West Point today. And he created the first real permanent trade routes connecting Europe and Asia. He didn't just conquer the world, he connected it. You know, his impact was so massive that in cultures far, far away from Greece, in Persia, in Arabic, in Sanskrit, a saying popped up that people still use today. Jo jeeta, wohi Sikandar. What it means is he who wins is Alexander. Just think about that for a second. His legacy was so absolute, his victories so total, that for thousands of years across dozens of cultures, his own name literally became the word for victor. And that, I think, is the ultimate proof of the man who conquered.